Okay, welcome everybody to this provider collaboration webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for those who've joined us in the webinar with Paul and myself. Purpose of the session really today is to understand what opportunities we have in a sector to collaborate when it comes to where we find ourselves at the moment from a digital perspective, but also a sustainable perspective in terms of what happens post COVID-19 and learning deliveries and models, etc. My name's Erica Farmer. I've got 20 years at L&D and apprenticeship background, leading big providers such as British Gas and Virgin Care, and I now work with providers in digital learning and consultancy. And I will hand you over to Paul, who will do some introductions around why we are doing what we're doing. We'll also cover the conversation around the UFI funding opportunities that they was talking about yesterday on the webinar. So Paul will quite happily summarise where we are with the opportunity with that. But also we'd like to have a wider conversation with everybody on this session around what are the challenges that you guys are facing currently from a learning perspective, a digital perspective, and anything bigger than that. What is your appetite for us to work as a group and how we think that could potentially work together going forwards. So if you are on mute, that's fabulous. If you've used Zoom before, there's a you'll know there's a toolbar at the bottom of the screen, and if you click on the chat box where there's a little speech bubble, it brings up a chat box, and you can put any questions in that chat box as we're talking through. As Paul's going to summarise the UFA conversation, you might have questions that come up as part of that. Alternatively, there will be a Q&A towards the end of the session where you might want to just ask Paul or I or anybody else questions anyway. So if that's okay with everybody, Paul, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi, thanks, Erica. Hi, everyone. So my name is Paul Conroy. I am the director of NETS Group, which within the group has two training providers. One is Nationwide Energy Training Services, recently rebranded as Learning Plug, and the second is VSS Training and Development. And that also was recently rebranded as part of our acquisition to Silver Paw. And myself and Erica have had a number of conversations over recent weeks. Really what we're looking to try and do is to reach out to all providers. We are all in a very similar situation whereby we've had to change our approach in terms of how we deliver the various contracts and training that we have on our books. And we've had to change the way in which we interact with our learners, with our employers, etc. And really, I know that there are a number of providers out there that are struggling for many different reasons. Some of those obvious ones will be around finances and how they're going to manage that going forward. But equally is how they're going to manage their existing business and any future business. And I always talk about revenue protection and revenue generation in that context. So how are you going to manage your existing learners that are currently on programs with you, but also how are you going to be able to continue to engage with learners and employers going forward? And the key crux to all of that is in the use of technology. We're all being forced, we're all isolating at the moment, and we're all restricted in terms of our movement. So we're going to have to embrace that technology, but it's making sure that we do that in the right way. So I'm 25 years now in adult education and have worked with various organisations in the past, including Working Links and JHP, and helped JHP with the merger with Learn Direct, and got involved with NETS Group about 5-6 years ago. They were wholly a commercial outfit at the time to help them to transition into funded contracts, and then moved on to apprenticeships, and we now have adult education budget contracts and traineeship contracts as well. Just to give you a very brief overview of our current situation, we're working very well with our apprenticeships and the employers. As recently as yesterday, we've had our first announcements in terms of apprentices being furloughed for employers, and I'm working with them to see how that can work. On our AEB front, we've virtually had to suspend all delivery currently, and we're looking at how we can evolve a delivery model that will be virtually online and digital to engage learners through our AEB contract. And again, similar with our traineeship contract, because the bulk of that delivery is going to be involved in work experience. We've had to suspend our traineeship delivery at the moment, and we sought advice from the ESFA in terms of what the best approach to take with that, and they've suggested absolutely, because the main element is the work placement there, we're going to have to suspend delivery until we can find a workaround for that. So that's where we're at as an organisation, and what I'm keen to do is really for us providers to have conversations about how we can share our experiences, how we can share any best practice and opportunities that we come across. And equally, I'm conscious that as individual organisations, cash is very tight. We're going to have little or no budget in terms of that innovation and that development that might be needed around that digital content and that digital delivery. But what I wanted to do was to have conversations about, are people prepared to collaborate in terms of putting those budgets perhaps together so that we can work together and share that content. Where there's existing content, are providers happy to share that as well with other providers? And I think, you know, this is a real opportunity for us as a sector to start to work together where we feel it's appropriate, for the good of the sector and us all, and also in terms of protecting those contracts and protecting those brands like apprenticeships and so on, so that we are outwardly saying to, you know, employers and the like, we're still here, we're still operating, and we still want to move forward, and we're doing that collaboratively together. So that's really where I've been coming from, and the conversations that I've been having with Erica over recent weeks in terms of how we're able to move that forward. And hopefully what will happen is that we'll build some momentum and some traction around that to enable providers to interact and engage and so on. Erica touched on an opportunity with UFI. And there was a webinar that was held yesterday, and UFI are asking providers who are directly affected by the latest crisis, as they call it, the coronavirus crisis, whereby they've had to virtually stop delivery, and they don't have the infrastructure and the content and the expertise to be able to deliver to their employers, and therefore are saying, right, we've got grants available. Those grants are from £10,000 up to £25,000 to enable providers to bring in that infrastructure, bring in that digital content, bring in that expertise to enable them to move forward. It's specifically for any legal entity, so that can be charity, private provider, that is delivering vocational training. So that's the key part. They must be delivering vocational training. That definition of vocational training is to those who are currently in work or those who are looking to enter work. So that's key. And it must be post-16 education as well. So that will exclude most schools, for example. And it can't be through a higher education institute. So that will exclude universities as well. But for everyone else who's left, they have the opportunity to bid. And it's really aimed at those organisations who don't yet have that infrastructure in place. Some people on the webinar yesterday asked questions like, but if we're using Zoom like we are today, or we're using Teams, does that exclude us? And what they're saying is, no, absolutely not. If it's something that you're using as a communication tool, is that in itself enough to be able to say, we have a digital offering? And I think I would say that the answer to that is no. It's much wider than that. And I'm sure Erica will be able to talk in terms of what that wider offering can look like. But certainly from my perspective, just because we're on Zoom today and we use Zoom with our learners, we also use Teams with our staff, that doesn't say that we have a digital offering to our employers and our learners. It's much wider than that. Included in that, in terms of what the grant can be used for, absolutely is the transitioning of offline or analog content to digital content, and also the platform that would be used to enable that content to be delivered through. We need to be mindful of our staff. So our staff may not yet be fully trained or aware of the opportunities to deliver digitally, and may not be au fait with that technology. And therefore it's how do you train your staff up to ensure that they can do that in the best and most effective way possible as well. And then the grant can also be used for help with some consultancy. So again, whether that be in terms of helping you find the best routes to market, the best use of technology, digitizing that content, and also the project management side of it. It's very short in terms of the time frames. The actual applications have to be in by 5 p.m. on Monday. That's Monday, the 6th of April. So it's a very tight turnaround. If you go onto UFI's website, so it's ufi.co.uk, you can create an account straight away, and then you can go to what's called the VOTech Now, so VOC Tech, TECH Now link, and it will give you the overview in terms of what that application process looks like. Very quick and easy to create an account. You just put in your details, they'll send a verification email. Once you've clicked on that, your account's created, and you will instantly be able to start your application. There are 6 stages to the application, most of which is fairly standard in terms of your information. And then there are questions about why do you want to apply for the grant. And most of those questions are limited to 100 or 200 word answers. So they're very conscious of the limited time frame that we have to apply for that money, and therefore are looking for very succinct answers to get to the point of why you want to do this and what you're hoping to achieve. They are also asking you to provide a financial overview of the project, of what you need the money for, but they also understand at this stage they're going to be estimates, so they're not looking for exact amounts around that. In terms of the actual timeline, so the deadline for applications is very strict, 5 p.m. on Monday the 6th of April. The evaluation process, they will make decisions by Tuesday the 14th of April, and they would then expect those who are successful to attend an introduction webinar on Thursday the 16th of April. So it's very quick in terms of the turnaround. The maximum length of the project is 3 months. So again, coming back to the purpose of the grants is to work with existing providers who have an existing learner base delivering vocational training, to ensure that those providers are able to move to a digital offering that allows them to continue to engage and progress those learners. That's the main aim of the project. What UFI are also looking for is scalability. So beyond the project, beyond the 3 months, what will this grant enable you to do as a provider? So does that enable you to have a broader offering in future? Does that enable you to have a broader customer base in future? And so they're really looking at the scalability and dare I say it, they didn't use this term, but the legacy from this grant that it will have for you as a provider. So that's a sort of overview in terms of that. There is lots of information on UFI's website. They've got FAQs. You can also click on a link. They haven't yet got the link from yesterday's webinar. Yesterday's webinar was the second webinar they've held on this, but you can watch the first webinar and the link is already on their homepage for that. I'm sure at some point today the link for the second webinar will be there, and they've got their latest FAQs uploaded there as well. So lots and lots of information around that. But I would encourage everybody to have a look at it, and if you feel it's appropriate for you and it's something that you need to do anyway within your business, look to apply for that grant.
Lovely, thank you, Paul. That's brilliant. So I suspect that's probably sparked questions and queries, and I know we're not experts in this stuff, but it would be good to get a bit of take. So I've got a question from Anna. Tried to register yesterday and never got the confirmation email. I don't know if they've perhaps waited for all of the webinars to be finished before people start applying. Did they talk about that at all?
And my experience was similar. When I first tried to create an account, it wasn't successful. I emailed the info at email address, and what came back was check your browser. So I was using, I think I tried Safari and Internet Explorer. Google Chrome was the best. And as soon as I went on Google Chrome, it worked.
Brilliant. Good old Chrome.
So try Google Chrome.
Brilliant. Okay. And in terms of vocational learning, I know they said at the end that they're not looking at ILRs, they're not looking at ESFA funding, they're not looking at whether learners are on breaks of learning or if they're looking at additional support. They're not interested in any of that kind of detail, are they?
No, they're not. They are not associated with government funding whatsoever. They're a charitable trust, and therefore they don't have any limits either. Absolutely, they're not interested in the specific contracts that you have. They're not interested in if you have a direct contract or you're a subcontractor. They're not interested in those relationships. What they're really interested in is very simple. Do you deliver vocational training? And have you been disrupted in your delivery of that training within this current climate? And if so, how can we help? That's UFI. How can UFI help through the grant to enable you to re-engage those learners and progress them on?
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Great. We've got Melanie join us. Hi, Melanie. Thanks very much for joining us. That's brilliant. Another question from Anne. What's your sense of whether you need to have client or clients who are supporting this? And do you want to unmute and just talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. I was on the call yesterday, actually, so I heard the Votech webinar on it, which was really useful. And I got a sense from it that you need to be able to say which clients are ready to go right now with your idea and your solution, with a little bit of acceptance that it might not pan out the way you're hoping it would pan out, but that you've got clients in the background saying, yes, we're desperate for you to change the way you're communicating with the learners right now. Did you get the same sort of feeling?
Yeah, so Anne, so what they're basically saying is that you need to have an existing learner base. So if you've got existing cohorts, for example, that you're delivering to, so if I use our example, so we've got apprentices on program. So has that been disrupted? Has that delivery been disrupted? So obviously we've had to suspend all face-to-face delivery, so it is having an impact. So what they're saying is, what impact is that having on your learners? So from our perspective, our apprentices, and how would a digital offer improve that delivery for those learners? How would it ensure that they continue to make progress? What they've made very clear is it can't be something that you're looking to do. So if you haven't yet engaged, so if it's a new contract, for example, or something you were thinking of doing, that's not what they're looking to do. It has to be that it's disrupted existing delivery. Now,
do you need a testimonial from that client to say, and we want you to do? So if you've got cohorts of learners with client organisations, so it has been disrupted, but the clients are so busy running around about what they're going to do about the crisis that it's been difficult to engage in conversations with all of them. So we took from the call yesterday that we need to put our case forward with those clients who have engaged and who are supporting, but I've not seen the application, so I don't know if you have to actually name the clients who are backing you in this approach or not.
So the one part that was on the slide yesterday between the 6th, the deadline, and the decision making, they talked about due diligence. So it might be at that point that they ask for further information, or it might be that the decision that they make on the grant is subject to. I don't think it's going to be too onerous. I certainly didn't get that impression yesterday, but absolutely they will need you to prove, I would suspect, that you have existing delivery in place. I would argue that there's an opportunity there for you. If you have clients who are disengaged, for want of a better term, because of the crisis, is how you could actually turn that around to benefit by offering a model that is very flexible, very accessible for them, so that actually you can say, absolutely understand that your focus is elsewhere. Just so you're aware, we're also focusing on making sure that we make it as accessible for you so that you can still access your learning and move forward.
Yes, so we've got one client in particular who we were about to start the design of a program that would roll out to 100 people, and obviously that's gone by the wayside, and they've been a bit reticent to sign off us completing the design while all of this is going on, so that we're ready to go. But our thoughts were, we could say, look, there's no risk to you. We'll fund it through this partnership with UFI. We'll repurpose the content and the design and pilot it with you. And then once you're happy, we're ready to go for the 100 learners.
Absolutely. So I can only give you my opinion based on what was said yesterday. So what I'm hearing from you, Anne, is had we not been in this current situation, you would have moved forward with those 100 learners. So that's exactly it. So you have been disrupted. It has affected you. So absolutely, that's what the purpose of the grant is for. So what you're saying is, if we can come up with an offering that's fit for purpose for our client and those 100 learners, then it will move forward. And that's the purpose of the grant.
Great. I think some really good questions there, and kind of we're now starting to think about what does that mean, aren't we, in terms of everyone's in a different situation, although in similar boats, as it were. Melanie, Michelle, any questions for you? Any thoughts? Anything you want to talk about? Melanie, if I come to you, fine to let me know if there's nothing on your mind. But if I just unmute you, or if you, there you go. Anything from you?
No, it was just really about having those learners already on board. I mean, we've got a couple of clients where we do ad hoc stuff, which is classed as essential training, but we haven't got like a program. But with the program that Anne's talking about, we have got 100 learners ready to go. So it was just understanding the difference in terms of how the funding worked.
Yeah. Yeah, if I think from what Paul's saying, if you can, the litmus test is that, would you have been doing it anyway, and are you disrupted now because of COVID-19, isn't it? That's the question to ask, which it sounds like you would have been on both of those. So yes, you are. So, okay. Yeah. Thank you, Melanie. Michelle, I'm just going to come to you. I know you've got kids and things in the background, but just to give you an opportunity to ask any questions or share any thoughts.
No, I'm all right, thank you. I'm just listening in. So we have a little bit of remote delivery that we have started dipping our finger into anyway, previous to this. So this would really sort of support us as a company, taking it to the next step. So the training for staff, that's the bit that we are struggling with everybody being at home and remote, giving that training and how to use the systems and how to engage learners through remote delivery is something we need to sort of look at.
So is that one of your biggest challenges at the moment, Melanie, then?
Michelle, yeah.
Sorry, Michelle,
yeah,
sorry.
I think it's just having everybody so remote. So we are delivering training, but obviously it's hard to, you're not sat next to someone and showing them the tools. You're delivering training on how to use a remote platform remotely, if you know what I mean. So we are looking at that, and then obviously just sort of how to different tools that you can use. So we use Teams, and we've just started using Zoom as well. So how it's going to impact learners and employers, the different software that they need to download. We have quite a few learners going through endpoint assessment at the moment. So we're trying to look at how we can use remote invigilation for tests, for instance, which is proving a little bit difficult at the moment. So
yeah, I know some of the EPOs have been on it, and some of them have taken a while to drag themselves into the normality of what we face ourselves in now, isn't it? So I know there's been a bit of lobbying around some of that. So yeah, okay. There's lots of things to think about, isn't there, in terms of remote delivery? What does that mean? What does blended learning mean? You know, I think it was interesting. It's not just a case of getting people in front of a Zoom camera and delivering your material that you've done and not give your trainers or learners any support. What you've just said there, Michelle, around getting the team into the right space in terms of not just the skill set but the mindset, is absolutely one of the biggest challenges on this stuff. And some of the organizations I'm working with kind of think it's, the initial starting point is, let's just set a Zoom account up and put that person in front of it and it'll be fine. And actually the design methodology and the thought process and the mindset process and everything that sits before that is actually the more important thing before you get anywhere near putting someone in front of a Zoom camera, and then everything that sits around that in terms of a blended offer and a platform and e-learning and all that stuff. So everyone's just trying to get their heads around that at the moment. Thank you, Michelle. Paul, I've got a question from Anne. I understand there's only 20 grants available. Is that right?
From what I recall yesterday on the webinar, there were two things. They were unsure in terms of the volume of applications that they were going to get, and actually weren't setting. So if you took that example, Anne, the 20, that means that the range is anywhere between £200,000 at the lower end to £500,000 at the upper end. And then if you took the sort of average being there, you're talking sort of £350,000. So it was very difficult for them to say, if they don't get the demand that they're looking for. And the second point is they don't know what the average application is going to be. Now, we were talking about this before, myself and Erica, on a funding perspective, where funding always drives behaviour. And if you take other examples like university funding caps at 9k, and straight away 57% of universities went to 9k. And if you take apprenticeship funding bands, most apprenticeship providers naturally end up at the upper end of those bands. The suggestion probably would be that most will be applying for the upper end of that band, to nearest to the 25k, but they'd need to justify that. And when you're taking one of the biggest costs out of that, unless you're a charity, which is wages, and they made it very clear they're not paying wages as part of this. They'll pay the staff costs for the training element, but not overall for the project. Actually, it's a lot more difficult to justify 25k's worth of funding around that. So it's the answer that I heard yesterday was, we're going to see what comes in. The other point to make is they said, if there is an application that doesn't really fit the scope of the grant, that is really innovative and is way outside the box, and we really like it, then we may also accept that as well. So I think they were basically saying, look, we're going to see what comes in. We're going to see, where we can best support organisations and where we think we're going to get the biggest impact, and then we'll go back out. So I wouldn't worry about a cap of 20. And then my final point from yesterday is actually there were a number of organisations who were on that call who heard that they weren't then eligible to apply. So whether it was because of where they were based, or their learner base, or the type of entity they were, i.e. higher education institute or a school. So there were a fair percentage yesterday who then couldn't move forward. So I wouldn't let the potential number of applications, successful applications, or the funding stop you from applying.
Yeah. Is that all right, Anne? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Okay, fabulous. Paul, that's really helpful, good summary. Any kind of personal thoughts or reflections from you in terms of obviously being on the session yesterday, and what you think the opportunities that could bring for this group, for the provider group network as a whole, and just kind of anything on your mind about that as well?
Certainly from my perspective, the focus is really around it's not just the technology, and I think a point was made very clear yesterday. The innovation is not about the VOTEC, it's not about the technology, it's about how you as a business are going to change your delivery model to incorporate digital. So bear that in mind if you're looking to do the application. So absolutely, we've touched on there in terms of staff and making sure you change their mindset. We also need to be conscious of, this is specifically about the interruption to delivery at this time and the reasons why. And what we can't fail to ignore is the impact it's having on learners and the impact it's having on employers. And if you can incorporate that into your application, albeit we're very limited on words, I think that's going to show that you've really thought about it. So I mentioned that we as a business, we're getting our first notifications of learners who are being furloughed, for example. Now, for some learners, that might cause some worries and some anxiety. For others, actually, it might not. Equally, we're talking with employers to understand what it means for them in terms of working remotely, the impact it's having on their businesses or their roles or their departments. And so just think about, although it's very clear again in the grant, and I'll make this clear, elements like mental health training or awareness are not included within the grant. It's just, how can you be innovative in your approach, whereby you're still meeting individual needs of learners and or employers while still delivering digitally. So just bear that in mind. But equally, absolutely, it's an opportunity to get it right from the outset. So as Erica said, it's not simply a case of using Zoom or using Teams or using Skype or whatever platform you want to use to sit in front of a camera and deliver something. It's how do you ensure, so if I put my Ofsted hat on for a second, how do you ensure the learners are engaged? How do you ensure the learners are learning and progressing? Ofsted are focusing very much on that long-term memory of learners. So how are you ensuring that learners are receiving that learning, but actually then maintaining that information, whether that be skills, knowledge, whatever? How are they maintaining that and retaining that going forward? And it's how you use the technology to demonstrate that that's really key. So it's not just about a PowerPoint presentation on Zoom and someone sitting in front of a camera and talking you through it. It's much wider than that. But I won't pretend to be the expert here. This is Erica's field, and where this is where I started a conversation with Erica in terms of how we could work collaboratively to make sure that people are understanding it's not just about buying a license for a particular piece of technology. The technology just enables you to interact with an individual or group of individuals. But the key bit is the interacting. What is the interacting looking like? And what impact is that interacting having for those individuals or those groups?
Yeah, going back to the EIF and impact, intention, all of that stuff actually aligns really nicely, doesn't it, in terms of the ask and what that means, and what your programmatic response to this is, rather than a Zoom session, like you say, Paul. One more question from Anne. Do you get any sense that they will be more supportive of apprentices who have had their learning interrupted rather than other employees or learners?
No, I don't get a sense that it will be particular groups of learners or contracts, so apprentices versus, say, adult education or traineeships or study program or contract specific. What is quite clear in the guidance document is if you can demonstrate the impact it's having on key workers, then that's going to be seen as more favourable. So it's not about the contracts that you deliver, it's more about the individuals that are on those contracts. And obviously the definition of key workers is quite broad. I know government have spent some time trying to redefine what they believe key workers are. But if you can demonstrate that you're engaging with key workers and what impact, again, that's going to have on them in their roles to continue to function going forward, then I think that's going to add more weight to your application.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So if you're providing to the NHS or, gosh, yes, like you said, there's a whole host of what a key worker means now, the supermarkets and that kind of stuff. It's
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And in terms of if you're thinking, well, that's all very good, and how do we cost this up, and what does that mean, and do I understand what digital learning is? And there's a lot of people out there that can support. Everybody's providing what they can in terms of pro bono support, how to use Zoom, here's a platform, this is what blended learning looks like. Tap into all of those good freebies. But also, if you're going to cost in to use a specialist, I slightly overestimate some of those costs as well, because I know sometimes the sector, when I speak to some sector clients, I'll say, okay, so I will give you a day rate of a value of £350 a day to do that whole program because it's volume discount. People go, oh my God, how could you charge me £350 a day? But actually you're looking for a skill set that will work with, like Paul said, the mindset, the trainers, you as a leader, what your strategy is, what's your learning interventions, how do we convert that? Is it e-learning? Is it a blend? Is it some Zoom, but done really interactively as a virtual classroom with some pre and post work followed up by a video, which hits the point that Paul was just talking around about the longer term memory. And I'm just not giving you a pop of learning, but I'm giving you learning that's going to be embedded and work for you and work in your role now, but also in the future. So it's about thinking around that holistic picture, I suppose, isn't it, around your digital transformation? What does that mean for you and your organisation? Okay, any thoughts, comments, questions, anything that anybody wants to share at the moment around the conversation we've had?
Apologies, I feel like I'm taking over a little bit,
No,
so I don't mean
please.
to, but
no, not at all.
I think what's going through my head is that conundrum of we've not got very much time to apply. We want to apply. We think we can make great use of the grants to support our learners. But in that haste, we might not be ambitious enough about what it could be for our business model going forwards. And so it's how ambitious do you be in your application around the practical support of learners right now and how you think technology can support, through to what support you might need as a business for that to be the start of your transition, and then there's more required. I've not thought that through, but that's what's going around my head at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because our headspace is full already, isn't it, at the moment, let alone with this as well. But it's an opportunity we want to grasp and take advantage of. So I think you've hit the nail on the head already, Anne. It's around what are we doing right now to counteract that disruption that Paul was talking about, but how do we make that sustainable? So that's our phase one. Is our phase two that we build a digital academy, and actually that's what we then sell to our clients, is our digital academy that is more robust and resilient in case learners can't make sessions, therefore saves on travel costs, etc., etc. So it's kind of the nurturing of those ideas now, but how does that help you create your learning strategy going forwards? I don't know if it would help if we all want to jump on another session tomorrow, if people have got time, and just bounce ideas around, for example, or think, what does that mean to your different types of sectors and clients, and what's the art of the possible? Because you're right, I think we need to assimilate this a little bit, but also not be paralyzed by it.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think certainly from my perspective, and again, I was having this conversation with Erica just before you all came online, it's almost like clearing, and I use the term, the mist that coronavirus has created for us all. And again, put yourself in the space or in the mindset. If that hadn't happened and this grant became available under different circumstances, what would I be applying for? What would that look like? What am I trying to achieve? And stay in that mindset. That mindset. That's what your application should reflect. So it absolutely is about, right, okay, I'm going to approach this in the right way. There is a longer term gain here as well. And that's what UFI are really interested in. They're interested in the scalability beyond this. They're interested in that legacy. So you're absolutely thinking in the right way. You know, what are the opportunities that this presents? But you're getting the foundations right. You're using the grant to get the foundations in, getting the right foundations so you can build upon those. And the advantage of having a digital offering is that once you've put that infrastructure in place, the scalability is very quick and very easy and very cost effective. So you're getting the opportunity to bid for money that will cover that initial cost, that implementation cost, but actually then for you going forward as an organization, that cost in terms of scaling up is very limited in comparison to the initial cost, if that makes sense. So that's what UFI are interested in, hearing you thinking about it. I wouldn't worry too much, as I said, about the actual costings, as in how accurate they are. And Erica's just given a tip there. You know, if you slightly overestimate, that's fine. The project managers will expect that. So you've got the initial adjudication in terms of whether your application is successful or not. I would like to think that if they thought that some of your costings were slightly out, that wouldn't go against you. It's more about who you are, what you're doing, and what impact it's likely to have, because then the project manager will come in and say, look, I think we need to look at this a bit more carefully. And also, you know, what's very clear from the outset here is, and forgive me for this, but they're looking for, their target audience are those that are not experienced in the use of digital technology. So it's not expected that you're going to be experts in your applications, but the project managers will help guide you through that if you're successful. And that's where they'll rationalize the costings and the milestone payments and so on throughout that 3-month project. And what was, again, just on that point, what was very clear yesterday is that you'll have a beginning, middle and end payment of those 3 months, but they will differ dependent on how much you need up front in that beginning costing with the infrastructure and what you put in your project plan for that. And that's where the project manager will work with you to try and assimilate that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Paul. That's brilliant. And like you said, all that information, that recorded webinars, that's all available on the ufi.co.uk website, isn't it? The recordings of the 2 sessions that they've had already.
So I checked just before I came on here. The first one is there. They have, and I asked that question specifically yesterday. They are going to email the slides out to every participant yesterday. So, Anne, you should get that email at some point. But they will upload the recording from yesterday's webinar on the website. So hopefully we'll see that additional link appear today, or replace the first one. I'm not sure how they're going to do it.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So that was kind of, just aware of time, we've got kind of 10 minutes left or 13 minutes left, but that was kind of the main piece that we wanted just to have the conversation with folk with today, to make sure that we're kind of thinking in the same lines. You know, there's an opportunity there for us to grasp, but also we wanted to understand people's appetite around this being more of a sustainable conversation going forwards. And that doesn't mean Paul and I managing this as a specific project and kind of, you know, putting time and effort into this becoming something. It's more around a collaboration and a network of providers who want to share content, share opportunities. Because typically as an industry, we're not very good at that, and we never really have been, but I think we've got an opportunity here to work closer together like a lot of other organisations are. So just really keen to hear people's appetite for that, and if that's not for you, then that's absolutely fine. If that is for you, then we'd be really keen on understanding what that means. So Anne and Melanie, I'm not sure if that's something of interest.
Perhaps it wasn't for Michelle.
Oh no, I noticed that she just dropped off. She was like, no, I'm off, thanks very much. No, not for me. No, hopefully she'll join us again. Or
Mel and I work together anyway in the same business, so just for a bit of context. I guess I'm not really sure about the answer to that. Yeah, the spirit of working together and collaborating, absolutely, no problems with that at all. I've joined a couple of other network groups as well, so I'm starting to get a bit concerned at the moment that I don't spend all my time networking and no time doing, so it's got to sort of amalgamate or clear out at some point. And I guess perhaps I don't know enough about you guys and who else is in your network to understand how that might work. But to be quite blunt, I guess, Mel and I work for a training consultancy that we've worked together for over 20 years probably.
Don't
now, Mel.
say how long.
We've got some good loyal corporate clients that we've worked with. We've worked in the past with people like Holly Herkett and Becky Craig and people like that. We know them. And we are quite, we don't see ourselves as a traditional business, but we do a lot of behavioural training. So a lot of it is face-to-face and in the classroom.
And we do collaborate with other small training businesses like
absolutely,
Joe and Tracy.
Yeah.
Evan, Kate. You know,
there's only 4 of us in
already.
our business,
yeah.
So we have an associate model. So as you would expect, we bring in that expertise from associates and other businesses as we need it. I guess this is quite a useful kick up the backside to us to be a bit more focused on our transfer to more digital delivery than perhaps we have been. Historically, we go where our clients take us. That's always been the way. We're a consultancy. So our clients took us into apprenticeships. We didn't set out to get into apprenticeships. Our clients took us there. Most of our business is non-apprenticeships, non-funded. So I think our challenge right now is to understand who we should be collaborating with to get a cohesive vision about who we want to be and what we want to be and how we move that forward. I think instinctively we probably don't want to be e-learning, we don't want to be that kind of technology. We probably want to be recognised as some of the leading facilitators of virtual sessions, and how do we make that journey to get there. I think that's probably where we'd feel most comfortable and most true to ourselves. Would you agree, Mel?
Yeah, and I think the virtual side of thing, I don't think it should replace the face-to-face. I think it should support it. So I think our offering should be, this is what we can do to support them along the way with their, helping them with their qualifications, or supporting them, embedding the learning afterwards, rather than the virtual sessions replacing the face-to-face, because I don't think they ever will.
Yeah, there'll always be a need, won't there?
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some quite novel ideas about how we might use virtual delivery, but I guess essentially right now, especially with this funding, is we need to think about what have we got that's ready to go and clients that will be willing to work with us, rather than what do we think clients might be interested in.
Yeah, because
that's confining us.
A lot of our clients that have got people or got learners on 12 or 18-month programs are talking to us about postponing, not replacing, if you know what I mean. So they've already geared up to dates in the autumn that should have been happening now and throughout the next 3 or 4 months, and they've just deferred them rather than cancelled or wanting to replace them. So it's about having those conversations with them about how can we use the digital in the interim, really, or that makes sense.
It does, absolutely, Melanie. And the providers that I've been talking to recently have had that same challenge. And my challenge back to them is, okay, well, let's go and show those clients how great this could be from a virtual perspective, because they just don't understand it. They think a webinar is something we sit in front, you get talked to, or, you know, if anything, that might be kind of their understanding. They won't see the benefits of the virtual classroom when it's facilitated really well by an expert.
And I think that's a danger right now, because right now I think they'll be seeing some knee-jerk Zoom meetings
absolutely
that aren't being run very well, and that technology is not supporting because the bandwidth's not great at the moment. And so there is a danger that they'll dip their toes in and think, oh no, it was exactly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely, Anne. And again, the similar conversations I've been having around, no, we're fine, we're geared up to digital. We were just going to use our PowerPoints that we've had before, and it's okay if they've got some bullet points on there, and you know, and if we don't get on, we'll try again. And you kind of think, oh my God, it's the last thing you want to be doing. But I think
I guess apologies, but the way I think of you, Erica, is you 2-minute videos. Yeah. So there might be a whole host of other expertise and support that perhaps I haven't got in my head yet. Paul, this is the first time I've met you, so I'm not quite sure where your collaboration and expertise would come in. So I think we will undoubtedly need some partners to work closely with to take us on this journey. But I'm not sure we've got a fixed idea in our head at the moment as to who they will be, how we find them, and obviously how we work together, because it will have to be virtual.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've been working with a lot of organisations to train their trainers on delivering virtual classrooms. So kind of been leading in that space as well. So working with likes of the LPI and those guys. So really happy to kind of ping you some examples of some work and see what you think, if that's of interest. So.
Brilliant.
I did a qualification with the LPI.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah.
But I haven't really... well, like Anne said, we've had a kick up the backside, really. We did that qualification, and then we haven't really put it to good use, have we, properly? Done a couple of sessions, but not...
and there might be a push at the moment for us to do as much as we can ourselves because of the cost basis, but our model actually is about pulling people in and using associates and other resources. So once we get back to some sort of normality, we'll be farming a lot of that facilitation and virtual delivery out anyway. So it's finding those partners. Sorry, Paul, I think I cut into what you were about to say.
No, it's fine. There was 2 points that I picked up on there. The first one is coming back to Melanie's Melanie's comments, is it's the why. So, you know, from the employers, from your client's perspective, why is it they're looking to delay to the autumn? And I know you touched on it, might be because they don't see how it can work for them, or their experience is a poor one. But actually also there will be a tipping point, because they're saying maybe until the autumn. How do we know what's going to be happening in the autumn? And I had this conversation with, we work with LSEC, London South East College Group, and it was the week before last. And someone was asking a question, or lots of questions around GCSE delivery, but also around recruitment for the next academic year. And I said, right, okay, you're talking about trying to plan something for 12 weeks' time. Think back 12 weeks. And at that time, we'd worked out it was literally just after the week after New Year. Could we possibly have foreseen what's the situation that we're in 12 weeks ago? So how can we possibly know what's going to happen in 12 weeks' time? So all you can do is best plan for that. And I think your best plan at the moment in terms of what it's going to look like in 12 weeks time is status quo. There's no indication at the moment that there's anything else that's going to change. Messages that you get from government suggest that this could be certainly for 3 months, maybe as long as 6 months. So actually what I would be doing is I'd be going back to about those conversations saying, but what if nothing's changed and then it becomes a missed opportunity, and then have discussions around what that missed opportunity might look like. Whereas they could actually grasp that opportunity now and engage with yourselves through a different delivery model accepted, but actually then be using that opportunity. So the conversation should be around, okay, what could we utilize this time for? What are your staff currently doing? What could you focus them on around, L&D and training to better prepare you for when this is over? Because that's an unknown.
I think you're right, and I think perhaps I go back to something Erica said a few minutes ago, which is they haven't got the headspace that the clients we've been talking to at the moment to really even go through that thought process. So maybe it's about putting an idea in front of them rather than trying to pin them down to that conversation. Now, in all fairness, the idea will probably only lead to that conversation because it will focus their minds. But I think right now they perhaps need to see a glimpse of what we're talking about before they start to open up their minds.
Absolutely. Make it easy for them.
And then the second point, and then I'll shut up then, is in terms of, absolutely, Jan, we've only met for the first time. From my perspective, this has always been about any potential collaboration opportunities where the sector can support. Now, if I can do something for you, I'll be more than happy to look at, supporting you. If I can't, I'll be very honest and say that I can't. But at least the opportunity to have that conversation and that interaction is there. That's all I'm asking for. And as Erica said, I think as a sector, historically, we've not been very good at doing that. Even where you've got, partnerships or relationships. So I'll give an example of prime providers versus subcontractors. There are some really good examples, but there are many more not so good examples out there. And I think at this time, what we all need to be doing as, learning providers is working collaboratively, sharing the experiences, sharing the ideas, sharing the opportunities. And then I think we'll all get through this much better than if we try and do it alone.
Absolutely. I think perhaps in terms of the other networks and stuff that I talked about, it might be opportune to mention that one of the networks that we're part of is called L&D Unite on Facebook. And it may be worthwhile you joining that group and it becoming a bigger united front. There's some fantastic trainers within that group, and there's a free session on Agile taking place right now, just where people we should be on.
All right. Okay.
That is just where people are offering up their expertise to help people through this period, but also share what they know in case it's useful to somebody else.
Yeah, just looking for that, and I can't see that at the moment. Is it called L&D Unite, or is it Learning and Development Unite?
L&D Unite.
As in ambersands,
yeah.
L&D. Yeah, okay. I'll have a look later. It's not coming up at the moment, but yeah, brilliant. We'll do that. Thank you. That's brilliant. Okay, Rich, I think you've just joined us. So I just said I'll make sure you get the recording, so don't worry about that. But I don't know if you just want to say hello.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I was tied up in another Zoom meeting. Yeah, so just to give you a quick heads up of who I am. I'm Richard Jenkins, and I'm the Chief Executive for Education and Training Skills. We're an Exeter-based charity that delivers apprenticeship provision and continuous professional development courses. We're currently working with the likes of the police, Live West, and a number of other small to medium enterprises as well. And COVID-19, I think, has in a way been a real eye-opener for everybody in our organisation. Has been a good kick up the backside, to be honest with you. And
we're saying the same.
Yeah, and certainly making us think differently about how we can offer our services and, like you say, collaborate with others, which we do more so than ever now, to be able to deliver relevant, current, and sort of suitable continuous professional development to organisations that need that. So, it's a horrible time we're all going through, but it also, on the flip side, has sort of opened everybody's eyes to how we can do things differently and more efficiently and effectively as well. So that's just a little bit about myself. So.
Lovely, thanks Rich, thank you ever so much. Okay, so I think that's come towards the end of our session today. Like I said, I've recorded everything that's been discussed today, and I'll get the recording out. There's quite a few people that messaged me to say can't make the live session today, but really interested in the recording, so I'll be sending that out to people. And I guess in terms of next steps, we were thinking about, you know, just let's get this grant application done and dusted, and it might be worth us coming together in a week or so's time, just while we've had the time to digest all of that stuff and the conversation today. Is that of interest for people if we put something else in the diary?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Fabulous. Okay, and you know, this might go nowhere, this might be brilliant for everybody, and something in between. So that was kind of, Paul, I guess, just to come to you for kind of last words, that was our intention really, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in terms of the grant applications, Erica said, you know, tight turnaround. It's Monday, 5 p.m. More than happy if anyone wants to get in contact if there's any questions that you want to ask, and I can help. By all means, I equally will have my head in that application for the next couple of days. I'm aiming to try and not leave it till the last minute. And they did give us warning yesterday, and didn't they, to say don't leave it to the last minute just in case there's problems with uploads, etc. Because when it comes to 5 p.m, that is the final cutoff. There will be no allowances made. But yeah, absolutely. You know, if we can continue the conversations, fantastic. You know, if there's opportunities, as I said, for us to work together, share ideas, then I think that's great. Even just, you know, you guys joining today and wanting to participate is just a show of that willingness to collaborate. And long may it continue. And I do hope that we all have conversations and see each other again. But if we don't, I wish you all the very best of luck with what with your endeavours and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. But you know, for me, we are never going to return to the way it was. I think the world has been given an opportunity to see how we can embrace technology. That's not to replace, but it's to complement what we've been doing in the past. But I think it doesn't matter what type of business you are, we've been forced to reevaluate how we operate and how we do things. And I think that whether you're a business owner or whether you're an employee or whether you're a service user or a customer, I think our expectations have changed now. And we need to be mindful of that going forward as well.
Lovely. Thanks, Paul. Thanks ever so much, everybody, for your time. Hopefully we'll jump on the Zoom very soon. Good luck with your applications.
Good luck, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye.